the series, you're going to be following 4 different timelines. In those timelines, there are 4 different perspectives. You have the Imperial's perspective, you have the Helen and Brothers perspective, you have the Knight's perspective, which is the Colors of War, is the first book in that. So you have each one of these perspectives that I've specifically broke the characters into. For the Colors of War, the sequel to it is called Barcelona. However, before I publish that book, we're going to be doing a book called The Band of 10. The Band of 10 is a almost perfect prequel leading up to the events that take place in the Colors of War. And then the 2 storylines are going to separate. So I was working at Joe's Collab Shack with Demetrius Morgan, wonderful illustrator, wonderful friend. And one day he said, do you draw, do you write, you know, what do you do? What do you do artsy? And I'm like, well, I play in a band, but I also write books. And he's like, really? Have you written any books? I'm like, no, it's more of I'm hoping to write a book someday. He said, well, okay, do you have any sketches or anything? I'm like, yeah, I have a whole book of castles that I've drawn to put in my fantasy universe that I've been coming up with. And he said, bring them in. So one day after work, you know, it's probably midnight or something, our boss says, okay, you guys got 20 minutes. I'm doing paperwork. Here's a free beer, sit down, and you guys can hang out. So me and him, we were hanging out and going. He said, okay, Nolan, when you go home, you got to write the book. I'm like, write the book? Oh no. So I went home and I wrote the book. I didn't like it, so I deleted it. The next day I come back and I say, okay, I'm gonna write again. So I write, didn't like it again, I deleted it. And then the third day I said, okay, I'm gonna write it. I wrote it. And I said, well, if you keep deleting it, you're never gonna get any place with writing the book, Nolan. So I said, well, I guess you're just gonna have to keep it. And so every day since then, I'm not sure there's been a single day that I haven't written something. And it's become just a love and passion for me. Especially The Colors of War was my first book that I completed, and it just pulled me into it. You know, it was just a side quest, I guess, a side story at first in my mind. And the people in it, the characters just pulled me in, and I wanted to write more about them, and I wanted to learn more about them. I wanted to understand what made them do the actions that they were doing. I wanted to learn what their beliefs were, what their religions were. I wanted to learn who they were as a person. So the book has always been fantasy. All my books are fantasy. I have not written any books that are historical. You have to find a historical event, you have to research it. But doing this, my books come from a historical perspective. My style of writing is the whole human experience. I want you to read the book and understand that this is the human emotions that we go through. This is the human trial that we are in. This is the trials and tribulations that all human beings must go through. But the individual characters are all invented. The names are all invented. While they all have inspiration from reality, they're all unique to the book. With Colors of War, the main character in this was a character I had never designed. I had never named him, I had never thought of him. He simply was a character that occurred naturally, because in writing, characters come into existence through a natural nature. Initially, it was meant to be Stephen, the wise, elderly character who was meant to be on his last campaign, his last hurrah, his last battle. This was the last grand action of his existence. He was trying to recapture the memories and moments of his youth. But this character snuck into my heart. He grew more so than any other character by himself, just in a natural form. How that happens, I don't exactly know, but anyone that's written any amount of significant stuff has realized that characters sometimes have a mind of their own. You know, you're writing the book, but they act in a logical manner that belongs to them alone. So this character snuck into my heart, And he kind of embodies some of the things that I always wanted to be in my life. You know, I wanted to be the strong man. Well, of course, every human being who's ever lived always wants to be strong. You know, hardworking. Well, of course, everyone wants to be hardworking. Intelligent, easy to learn. Well, of course, these are qualities we all want. But then, of course, I needed to give him, you know, you have struggles in life. So I didn't really give it to him. I found the struggles that he had. You know, his past haunts him to a daily basis. You know, my past doesn't. I had a good life. You know, many characters in my books have good lives before they get to the point of difficulty. Him, no. And did I want to give him a bad life? No. It was horrible to do that to him. But yet it was what was meant to be for the story and for the character. But he is a fighter. He's not a quitter. He's someone who is embodying that statement when all of us, all men, when you're a teenager, you're trying to figure out how to be a man. And that's who he is. He's trying to figure out how to be a man, but in a different setting than most of us have to go through in life. He's trying to make the hard decisions we all have to make. He doesn't make everyone perfect, but he's trying his best. It took me a while to really develop my own style. When I started off, it was a little bit black and white, but slowly by slowly, it's not something that changes overnight, but you build your own style, you know, watch some workshops online, through school I did some classes, but eventually I found my style that I wanted, and I even coined a term for it. It's called the full human experience, where I try and envelop every emotion. You know, I went to articles and researched every human emotion you can find. Eventually I found a nice little printout and I printed it out. And so when I go through my writings, I keep this next to me because I want to make sure I focus on every human emotion, every human experience one can go through. Love, loss, laughter. The second part of my writings is that all my books come from the art style of realism. Not hyperrealism or subrealism or any other form of realism, but true realism, where I'm trying to bring real events. Obviously, you know, it's a medieval fantasy. Well, how can it be real? Well, human beings are going to go through and they're going to react the same way that in our universe, with our grounded rules of our universe, they're going to react the same. You know, these aren't different beings we're dealing with in this novel. These are real human beings. All the people are exactly like me, exactly like you in many ways, shapes, and forms. There are some books that I have written, unpublished manuscripts, where I play around with people finding their humanity, or people born in different societies or different aspects. But for this book, it's very much grounded in the real perspective of human beings going through a fantasy world. You know, you aren't following the wizards, you aren't following the warlocks, the elves, the goblins. Those aren't the characters we're going to be following. We're going to be following the real, live human beings, and in the trials that they are going to have to go through in their life, how are they going to handle them? And when I do this, I try and present this in the way that a real human being would have to go through these events, with the real understanding that this is the way that, you know, not all the characters are modeled off of me. Actually, virtually none. Actually, I think none of them. You know, the traits, you know, I'm not writing a fantasy book because I want to write myself as every character. I'm trying to find the characters that I want to aspire to be. The heroes, you know, even if they may be a reluctant hero, maybe they don't even realize they're a hero. These are the people that you are trying to emulate in your real life. Those are the people that I have tried to write into my story. So the city of Divide was the first or second city, depending on which legend you believe in. There's two different historical narratives that you're given the option to believe in within the book, and you as a reader will have to decide which one of the two you choose to believe in. The city was originally named Syracuse. However, 12 years ago, after the war and the city was split in two with a demilitarized zone, it was renamed the City of Divide, or more commonly called the City of Divide by all that lived in it, including the kingdoms and the empire. Both came to call the city it. The city obviously is steeped in a deep heritage. However, it's illegal to practice in this heritage. So much of it is done in secret or in plain sight, with the knowledge that if you are called out or if they wish to kill you for your beliefs, you may be killed. In recent years, a mass influx of immigrants has come to the city from all over the world, all the way from the Northern Isles to the Great Desert of Boone, all the way from the land of Diction. You have people come there which are commonly called pilgrims. They are a mixture of people. Some are wealthy, some are poor. However, all of them are searching for a better life in Helena, but they are not natural Hellenans. And so in the city, a culture war is beginning to take over. Those that are searching for the traditional Hellenan values of the City of Divide, and those who are trying to create a new land of their own. And within the book, you're going to discover certain groups, varied, but under one banner called the Liaison, which are trying to unite together to tear down the new wave of immigrants, trying to destroy the new because they want the old. So it's really a culture war that's occurring in the city while they're trying to unify to fight the enemy invaders, the Vaughn. And you're going to have to read the book to find out what the outcome is. So you start off in colors of war in the demilitarized zone between the Empire of Quarth and the United Kingdoms of Khartan. These two nations have been rival nations for about 500 years, vying for the supreme dominance of the continent. The specific area you're at 12 years ago was the front lines of the war, where the City of Divide, at that time named the City of Syracuse, goes through a series of civil wars and rebellions. And you find the city is split in two ideology. Half want to join the Empire, half want to join the United Kingdoms. And all of the people who live there wish to be an independent nation of their own. However, they know the futility of that wish. And you join a small group of people who have been disenfranchised by both nations. They no longer belong to the Empire, they no longer belong to the kingdoms. It's a true anarchist state. I could go into the symbolism of it all, but the idea is that this is truly where mankind lies, in the agreement of an anarchist state. And you start with this understanding that human beings are inherently evil. And you see these human beings at their worst. And you meet one man, Stephen, who is trying to find the universal good in mankind. Helena was the first of the human nations. About 1,500 years before the events of the book start, humanity comes together to build the Titan cities, cities where no other creatures, demi-human or monsters or whatever you believe after reading my books, were the creatures that existed in that day. Regardless, it's the foundation of humanity starts in Helena. They build Titan cities and build a sanctuary around them. And throughout this series, you're going to find a lot of archaeological evidence. You're going to find drawings, papers, parchments, manuscripts. You're going to find armor. You're going to find weapons of the people that lived there once. Sometimes you even find historically ancient artifacts, such as weapons and shields, which are going to be used by the people of Helena. Because in the modern day, of the 36 Titan cities that once existed, only 2 remain, and only 1 within the United Kingdoms. And half of that has been taken over by the Empire. You're going to see the people who are proud people, who are oppressed people for many years, rise up and unify behind a series of leaders. These men are nothing special inherently. Very few of them, in fact, are even natural-born Hellenists. However, they find the Hellenic spirit something to aspire to. The culture, the way they live their lives, this understanding of unity and family, the understanding of one's culture and one's wish to bring back what was once lost. They're a monotheistic people. They believe in one God. And yet, that God has been outlawed by all nations across the world. And they have to worship their Lord in secret. It's a hard life that they live. And yet, they go through it day by day, willing and knowledgeable that it may not work out in the end. For they are a dying people. All nations of the world are killing off the Hellenists. And they find themselves at the beginning, at the extinction of their people. Faced with the extinction of their people, I should say.
Well, the art in the book, we'll say, not only is it medievalish, but based upon my prior works, me being a symbolic artist, I believe it kind of meshes with the book perfectly. We're talking about politics, we're talking about religion, we're talking about relationships between man and woman, and again, like, what is it like to be a young man growing up in a world of just being surrounded by chaos and anarchy. So I had to pretty much implement all those type of different feelings within these illustrations to make it very cinematic, if you will, so that we can, once you look at the images and the illustrations, you can find different meanings and pretty much some Christian Easter eggs within the images itself to highlight the importance of that particular scene, which I love about the book. Again, it's original. You're not going to, if you read a medieval fantasy before, when you go into this one, it's not like the same. What we try to do here, we try to do things that hasn't been done before in the same, or not in the same format as other people's done it. And we want to think outside the box.
Growing up, my mom would read to us every night, me and my brother, before we go to bed. Cover art is done by Demetrius Morgan. The back art is done by Josh Owens. A lot of this was a joint effort between, honestly, me, Demetrius, Josh, and my father were the big ones that really focused in and learned how to create a universe.